Hello. I wanted to record this tutorial. It is almost 2 o'clock on Friday, and I had planned on having this done at like 9 o'clock this morning. But as is typically the case, all kinds of things happened today at the world of Wisconsin Virtual Academy and Destinations Career Academy. So here we are. It is almost 2 o'clock, and I'm finally getting this out to you. I will not make this due until probably Wednesday next week. So that will give you, I know you're taking your STAR tests for math and reading on Monday. And possibly maybe you're doing that Tuesday as well. That shouldn't take you too long. So I'm thinking if I make this due Wednesday, I don't know, maybe I'll be kind and make it due Thursday. We don't have a lot of time left, so I have to be careful about how long I give you to turn things in. But this tutorial is about preparing to write your reader response journal. Now, some of you will remember having done things like this many times over. Some of you, maybe you've never done a reader response. I don't know. If you took Miss Nelt's class in 9th grade, you should have probably done some reader response. But anyway, even if you've done them before, my way of doing them and the way I want you to do them could be different from maybe what you've experienced in the past. So let's just take a look at how Miss Carlson has been trained to do these and how she wants to see you do them. Even if you're not going on to, even if you're not going on to further your education, doing things like this they have benefits beyond just academics. It shows attention to detail. It shows thoughtfulness, thoroughness, so many things that you need in your life, whether it's professionally, academically, socially, whatever. This has a lot. You just have to trust me that this is a good thing to get in the habit of doing and being able to show that you can do. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now and move on here to helping you write a reader response. So many of the standards that I assess my students for are based on showing that you have mastered the art of reading and writing in a variety of different ways. You have not been expected to do any formal writing in the course this far. You've done some writing prompts and you've answered some questions and things like that, but we have really not done any formal writing in this course. So I'm not feeling super bad for you having to do this in your last month of your senior year. And it's a really good way for me to be able to highlight what you can do at this point in your academic career. So this is your chance to end the semester with a quality piece of writing that you produced yourself. Your final reader response submission is going to be assessed against 2 reading standards, 3 writing standards, and 2 language standards, which you'll be able to see on the rubric once I assign that actual reader response. Now, I wish I didn't have to say this, but here it goes. Please do not do yourself or me a disservice by obtaining the information from online sources. I'm sure you can ask ChatGPT or some other AI tool what goes on in the essay. All I really need to know I learned in kindergarten, because that essay has been out there for a number of years, and I'm sure there's lots of information out there about it. But please do yourself a favor and really read it. Do some annotating of it. Think deeply about it. Think deeply about your response and your feelings toward it as you're reading. I know you're more than capable of doing this. It might take pushing, for some of you anyway, it might take pushing yourself beyond your current comfort zone, but I know you got this. You can do it. And, just really come up with something that you and I can both be proud of and that we can highlight for you. So you are going to prepare before just writing a reader response. I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to just write a reader response. That's why I haven't even assigned it yet. I want you to start preparing to write it by first collecting your thoughts and evidence from the reading of All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And you're going to do this via something called a dialectical journal, because I can't see you in real time and see your thoughts in your head as you're reading it. You're going to do this dialectical journal. So you did read the essay already. and did some annotating on it. But I really don't feel like that's even quite enough. So I'm going to show you kind of the process of writing a reader response. I first read the essay, do all my annotations, then I make this dialectical journal. And what dialectic means is, and I'm just going to read the quote here, it means the art or practice of arriving at the truth by using conversation involving question and answer. And the question and answer conversation you're going to have is with the text. And that might seem a little weird and kind of wackadoo, but it's something that strong readers do. As they're reading, consciously or not, they are having a conversation with the text, with the speaker, with the author. And this is meant to help you develop a better understanding of the text. Even all of the years I've been, in academics, and I've been teaching and been a student, I'm a student right now, in fact, even after all that time, I still have to do this process to fully, deeply understand what I'm reading, especially when we get into more thoughtful readings. So you're going to find it's a useful way to process what you're reading, prepare yourself if you should ever have a group discussion, and that it helps you gather what your teacher calls textual evidence, right? Evidence from the text to prove what you're saying and back up what you're saying. You should be under the assumption that I have read this essay. Of course I have. I've read it several times. So I don't need to tell you I don't need you to tell me what it's about. I'm not asking you for a summary. I want to really, really make that point very, very clear to you. I'm not looking for you to tell me what that essay is about. I'm very sure of what that essay is about. I want you to give me your response to that essay, parts of that essay. So hopefully this is going to make more sense the further I get into this tutorial. So as you read, I want you to choose passages that stand out to you, and you're going to be recording them in the left-hand column of the chart. And you're always going to include page numbers, and I'll show you that chart in just a bit. And then in the right column, so if you kind of consider it like a T-chart, in the right column, you're going to write your response to the text. You're going to write your ideas, your insights, questions you have while you're reading, questions of the text, of the author, of the speaker, reflections of things that it reminds you of, comments that you think of that come to you as you're reading. And I want you to label, in fact, I'm making that something that's part of the grading here, is that you must label your responses with the following codes. This shows me that you understand what categories your comments fall into. So I'm going to ask that you use at least each one of these codes. And since you're going to do a minimum of 10 responses, you're going to use some of these more than once, but I want to make sure that you at least use all 6 at some point. And I'm going to show you an example of how I do that just as we get into this here. So I'm going to call these codes. So Q, C, P, C, L, R, E. I'm calling them codes for now. Q stands for question that you're answering, you're asking. I don't know what that O is doing there. You're asking questions of the text. And what I mean by questioning the text, you're actually, in a sense, questioning the author or the speaker as well. And then I want you to use the code C for a connection that you made to text, text to world, text to your own life, whatever connection you made there. And I've given you lots of examples of that in other tutorials this semester. And then P would stand for predict, that you're anticipating what might occur as you're reading. CL would stand for clarify, that you're answering an earlier question or prediction that you made in your P code. And then R for reflecting, that you're thinking deeply about these passages, what they mean in a broad sense, not just at surface levels, but you're kind of making these conclusions about, you're drawing these conclusions about what the world means and what human nature does, or just the way things work. And then if E stands for evaluate, that you're making a judgment about what the author is trying to say. And again, I will show you an example in just a bit because I am someone who needs examples. So I always assume you do too. All right. So what am I looking for? What do you mean choose passages from the text? It's really going to depend on the reader. I really can't do this for you and give you straightforward things. I don't know what's going to seem significant to you or seem powerful to you or seem thought provoking to you or puzzling. It's going to be dependent on the reader, right? Everything depends on the reader. But some ideas for you is something that might stand out to you in the reading might be a creative use of literary devices or a style. In this case, all I really need to know, I learned in kindergarten, he has a very conversational style, and that's intentional. Passages that might remind you of your own life or something you've seen before or a memory. You might notice structural shifts or turns in what he's saying. He might be saying one thing and then turn. You might see a passage that makes you realize, oh, I hadn't thought of that before. There should be quite a few of those in this essay, actually. And then, are there any patterns? Do you see any recurring images or ideas or colors or symbols? And this might not be on the surface. You might have to dig for these. They might be abstract. But I'm hoping it will jog memories of kindergarten or at least youthful, way back at the beginning of your school years. What images and ideas and colors and symbols that come up for you. I know that's been coming up for me a lot lately because my daughter started teaching preschool. And so it's really like, whoa, bringing back a lot of thoughts for me. Maybe passages that have confusing language might stick out for you or unfamiliar vocabulary. That always kind of makes my brain go, huh, when I come across something like that. Even at my age, I still come across things that are confusing or unfamiliar. And that's fun. That for me is fun. I love learning new things. You might respond to, events that you find surprising or confusing even. So you have a conversation with the text that way. And then finally, passages that illustrate a particular character or setting. Now, there really isn't that in this essay because the character, if you will, is the speaker / author. And the setting, I suppose, is, modern day or flashbacks to kindergarten, right? But I added that just because that's something that you might be having conversation with in any text, right? All right, so responding to the text, you can respond in a different variety of ways. The most important thing to remember is they need to be specific, they need to be detailed. You can write as much as you want for each entry. It looks like there's just like a short amount of space, but just keep clicking enter. You can take as much space as you want. You will need to download this dialectical journal as a PDF before you submit it to the assignment folder. It's really the best and easiest way for me to read your assignments because I don't have to open up a separate link. If you add it as a PDF, I can just click on the PDF within the window of the grading window and grade it right there. I don't have to open up a whole separate link and wait for it and then go over to that other area. So if you've been wondering why, and I haven't explained that before, that's why. And then the most basic responses in these dialectical journals, and it's really all I'm asking for. I'm not asking you to go on and, be a Rhodes Scholar or anything, or, write some kind of scholarly journal. I just want basic responses that raise questions about the beliefs and values implied in this essay. And I feel like I'm losing my voice today. Hang on. Take a drink of some sparkling water here. Okay. I want you to give your personal reactions to the passages that you choose. I want you to discuss the words, ideas, actions of what this speaker is saying. I want you to tell me what it reminds you of. I want you to write what it makes you think or feel. I want you to agree and disagree, or, a combination of the two with what the person is saying. And then I'm adding this because there's a book called Readings and Feelings written by a guy named David Blake. And I like what he has to say that we can write responses. Um, we can write these responses in ways that not only discuss what the text is about, and I already know what it's about. So when I'm reading your responses, that's not real interesting for me. What's interesting for me are the feelings it evokes for you, for each of you. You're going to come at each piece of text from a different place based on past, experiences, but oh my gosh, based on a variety of things, right? And that's what's interesting to me is how you come at the text. You are going to respond through how you associate or you make different associations with what you're reading. So I always think of your sentences being things like, this reminds me of a time when, or, oh, I have a memory where blah, blah, blah. This reminds me of that. Or I remember when, whatever the case is. And so I've listed some sentence starters for you, but please don't be limited by these. They were just some that I kind of rattled off that I thought might help you. So things like, the part I don't really understand is, or I really don't agree with the author when he says, or I completely agree with the author when he says. In this passage, I think the author might be trying to say whatever. This passage reminds me of a time in my life when. This part made me think of the story, movie, book, television show, yada, yada, yada. If I were the author, I would have done this differently, or I would have said it this way. The part that makes perfect sense to me is, whatever. When the author says blank, it reminds me of blank. So again, don't limit yourself to these sentence starters, but I thought, sometimes that might kind of propel you into kind of where I want you to go with things. All right, so an important thing for you to remember while you're drafting your reader response, not necessarily this dialectical journal, but your reader response, once I assign that, is I want you to always return to the text. And this dialectical journal will help you do that. You're going to need a clear claim. You're going to need a few of them. You're going to have claims that you need to be supporting with text, or evidence from the text showing me that you analyze the text. I want your claims to be text to self, text to text, text to world, but they should all bring in quotes from the essay as evidence. And then you're going to continue to make connections. And I'm going to show you an example. So you have seen in my tutorials this semester some text to text connections and text to self connections that I made while reading. And I would use various symbols to do that. I think orange arrows I used on at least a couple of stories that we read. And I made note of those while I was reading in my annotations. All right, so because I like examples, I'm assuming you do, and I want to show you an example to get your motor running, your motor turning, your gears turning. And my example is based on a different essay than the one you were assigned, and I did that so that I didn't want to use the essay that you read, the All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, because I didn't want you to think like, oh, this is the right way to do it, right? So the essay I chose to show you as an example of this dialectical journal is E.B. White's Once More to the Lake. It's a wonderful essay if you ever just want to read it on your own. It's a great one for the start of summer. And if you remember, E.B. White is the one who wrote Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little. So you might be familiar with him as an author. All right, so here is my example. And of course, this isn't a full example. It's just I took 6 of the codes so that you could kind of see how I used them in my response here. This would not be a thorough one because I only got through the first 2 pages. But look at all I did in just the first 2 pages of the essay. Crazy, right? So I wanted to show you one example of each code to show you how to do that. All right, so you're going to give me a passage from the text. You're going to tell me what page it's on, and you're going to tell me your response to it. So your reader notes about that passage, and then you must label it with the code that you use. So you see, like in bold here, I have C, R, P, Q, C, whoops, I think CL. See, I even just made a mistake. Let me see here. Yeah, clarify was supposed to be CL. Well, even Miss Carlson is checking her own work. Okay, here we go. So I read the essay Once More to the Lake by E.B. White. And I'm not going to read all of these passages because it would take us forever here. But I took a passage and straight from the text. Now, I also did an in-text citation because I'm just so used to doing that. And if you want to be super fancy and show me that you know how to do that, that would be great. Fulghum, I think, is the author's name of the essay that we wrote. Robert Fulghum, if I'm not mistaken. Double check that because I can't remember exactly. But anyway, so you would do, the author's last name, comma, and then whatever page. And then I even reiterated by putting the page number in the middle column here. I said, here is code C. Code C, if you remember, is connect. So I made a connection to this passage, and I said, having spent a good deal of my younger years on the lakes of Minnesota, this pulls at my heartstrings. I actually got a feeling deep in my stomach when reading this passage. I long for those times again. So the connection I made was connect. I made text to self connection in this case, because the author talks about this lake that he used to go to in the woods when he was a child. All right. Then, oops, I just noticed I didn't put this there. Okay. So I took along my son who had never had any fresh water up his nose and who had seen lily pads only from train windows. Oh my gosh, where did I get willows from? Windows. And I used the code R for this one, reflect. And reflect means I think deeply about what the passage means in a broad sense, not just to the characters, but what conclusion I can draw about the world, human nature, or just the way things work. And my reflection here is I'm thinking here about how marvelous it has been to introduce my children to things from my past and watch as they experience them for the first time. This must be a human tendency. So that's my this must be a human nature kind of thing. So I'm reflecting on that. Then I took this passage about how he is worried that as he takes his son to this childhood spot of his, that it's going to have changed a lot. And so here I made a prediction, code P, and I said, I anticipate when the speaker returns to the lake of his childhood, things will have changed. Things will have been marred by progress, and he will be disappointed. Then I used Q, which stands for question. Ask something about the passage that is unclear. And here I said, I do not know what it means, and I used a quote here because I came right from the text, chucking the rowboat under the chin. Maybe it's personifying the waves? And then I said, I also do not know what hellgrammite is, but after looking up the term, I see it is the larvae of the Dobson fly, which is used as bait for smallmouth bass fishing, which completely makes sense in the context of this story. Essay. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of fun. I got to learn what a Dobson fly was and what a hellgrammite was. Not sure where I'll use that again in my life, but you never know. And then he talks about the tar and the progress that has been made at this lake place. And so I did a clarifier here. So CL, answer earlier questions or confirm, disaffirm a prediction. And I said, oh, I was right, but I also wasn't right. There was some modernization of his childhood lake, but the speaker says when he got back there, it was pretty much the same as it had been before. And then my final example for you is the E, which is evaluate, make a judgment about what the author is trying to say. And so I pulled this passage. We caught 2 bass, hauling them in briskly as though they were mackerel. If you don't know, mackerel is a very big, heavy fish. Pulling them over the side of the boat in a businesslike manner without any landing net. Ooh, big, tough guys, right? Pulling in a bass with no net. And stunning them with a blow on the back of the head. Yikes. And then I said, this passage is a bit brutal, but I believe, because again, I'm evaluating I'm making a judgment about what the author's trying to say. So I said, but I believe the speaker author is trying to show the reader how he and his son are bonding over something so quote unquote masculine as pulling in a heavy fish. It's definitely not as heavy as a mackerel. A bass is nowhere near the size of a mackerel, but I think it's alluding to, big masculine guys here, this guy and his son. Pulling in a heavy fish and then bopping on the back of the head. And maybe this is something they secretly know that women folk, quote unquote, wouldn't want to do and wouldn't approve of. And I'm saying that sort of tongue in cheek. Like, of course, I don't know this is true. I've just witnessed this kind of bonding experience before between fathers and sons. All right, so that was my example. And here is now your turn. I want you to not forget to label your reader notes. Don't forget that. And don't forget to use each one of these at least once. You're going to need to use them at least once. And I also don't want you to limit yourself to these 10 lines. That's going to be your minimum. So if you noticed, I did 6 of them within the first 2 pages of an essay that I read. So it's very, possible that you'll be very prolific in this dialectical journal. I don't know why that's so hard to say. So keep going. If you want to keep going, if you are in this last line, this 10th line here, and you click tab, it just automatically gives you more lines. So don't limit yourself to 10 entries. If you click tab, it'll give you more lines after the 10 that I included for you here. And then if you want to delete lines, if you go to format, table, delete row. All right, so your checklist. I want you to make sure you have at least 10 entries. That's the minimum. That you made entries that cover the span of the essay, right? You're not going to just do 2 pages like I did in the example. You're going to cover the span of the entire essay. That you've listed correct page numbers. And believe me, I can figure that out. Don't just pop page numbers in there thinking I won't notice. I will. Each code has been used at least once. There's only 6 codes, so you're going to have to use them at least once. And then I want you to use evidence that shows that you read this essay thoroughly and thoughtfully, and that you've given effort and care in your assignment. I did put in, I don't know if I should have even done this, but I did put your the rubric that I made for the reader response journal, or not journal, reader response written assignment that you're going to be doing. And remember, you can click view if you want this to be larger too when you're reading it. Oh, that's still pretty small, isn't it? Well, if you're interested, I put this kind of as a preview, what I'm going to be looking for when you write your reader response. I'm going to do a tutorial for that as well. But I just thought some of you might want to get started on writing your reader response. So here are some things that I'm going to be looking for when you write your reader response. All right. Happy hunting, happy dialectical journal writing. And yes, you are going to be reading that essay again, because you're going to be reading it in a different way this time than when you wrote it for annotating. All right, I'm also going to include this set of notes for you and instructions, and I've got a link to the essay that you're going to be reading. Remember, you're not reading the E.B. White essay. You're going to be reading the All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. I just used the E.B. White essay as my example. All right, good luck. Please, as always, send me an email if you have any questions about this, and I will talk to you soon.